Hello, I'm Madison.
And I'm Emily.
Welcome back to our second episode of BookSmart. Every month, with the help of our friends from Burgess Hill Girls, we are going to continue to share our recommendations for books we think you'll love.
We will also be meeting up via Zoom some of our favourite authors and give you a chance to for you to win one of their books.
So this month we've been speaking with Patrice Lawrence, an author who has written some of the UK's most popular books for teens, including Orange Boy, which has won a couple of prestigious YA fiction awards, and her latest novel, 8 Pieces of Silver, which has been chosen for Empathy Lab as part of the collection of must-read books for teens. So, shall we get on with the interview?
Yes, let's. It's lovely having you here today, Patrice. Nice to meet you.
Thank
How are
you.
you today?
Oh, I'm fine. It's sort of murky, and I've been sitting here going through edits for my new book, and we're feeling quite happy because the cover for my new book, we did like a cover reveal on Instagram and Twitter today, so it's lovely to get that out.
Awesome.
So we had that question kind of planned for later on, but I'd love to ask, so could you tell us about your new book at all?
Yes, the new book's called Splinters of Sunshine, and it comes out on the 19th of August, as I remember that. And it's got one of the characters from 8 Pieces of Silver, so DNA Dad, who kind of turns up in sort of 8 Pieces of Silver. He sort of goes to his next son, so the son who's sort of next in age, he lives with his mum, wakes up on Christmas Day to find his daddy never knows asleep on his sofa. So they kind of go on a road trip from London down to Brighton and then Hastings to find a friend that Spain knew from nursery school who's in trouble. So it's kind of like a tale of, I don't know, fatherhood, friendship, forgiveness, lots of wildflowers and a little bit of Freddie Mercury.
Awesome.
Nice. So in your book, 8 Pieces of Silver, both Bex and Silver are K-pop fans. So I was wondering, are you a fan of K-pop?
Yeah, to be slightly serious, I actually get really annoyed when people are snobbish about things that people like.
Yeah.
I always liked pop music, when I just always have, and I think because I've never been cool, it's never bothered me what people think. And one of the joys of being an adult is you just don't care because there's no one to impress.
That's a good motto.
Okay, so when my daughter was my daughter's 21 now, so when she was about 13 or 14, she first got into sort of Japanese pop and then into K-pop, and we've always kind of swapped music. So she kind of got into some of the different bands. It's kind of a bit of BTS, a bit of some of the other ones. And then we both got into like Korean indie music, which is really good. But there are, look at some of the choreography that some of the K-pop bands do, particularly also the women who have to do it in like high heels and hot pants, which the men don't.
Like Blackpink, they're dancing crazy.
Absolutely. So, you have to really, they've got a serious work ethic as well. And I liked quite a few tracks from sort of BTS, loved Singularity and is it Serendipity? That one where we're sitting on a little gangplank and there's like the stars. High production video for the videos. So yes, I do. And I wouldn't honestly to be honest, I wouldn't put anything in a book that I don't like. I wouldn't ever want to sneer at anything either.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what would you say, like, overall is your top genres of music? Like, if you have Spotify, I think if you go on search, there's like 2 top genres, kind of like that.
But I do go on Spotify, and what's very funny is each year, it comes out, your most listened to tracks or whatever. So looking at mine, it was like all Korean indie music, and then some of it was sort of like kind of new jazz, sort of like Michael Kiwanuka and that sort of thing. But I like some of these sort of Korean indie sounds almost like cinematic, and also kind of like listening to it because as they're singing in Korean and I can't speak Korean, I'm not so distracted by the words as if I was. So I like music that has that sort of slight cinematic feel to it. I like some old rock music, like sort of Led Zeppelin, and I love Bruce Springsteen. I've got my sort of Blondie t-shirt on because Blondie features in Indigo Donut a lot.
Yeah, I absolutely loved Indigo Donut, and the music in there I really love.
Thank you.
A lot.
Yeah, they're all songs that I just really like. They're just I remember like Guns N' Roses came out when I was a sort of teenager, and I just still love Sweet Child of Mine, and I see people playing it on a ukulele like on YouTube.
Yeah.
You know, it just makes me smile because those tunes just like change and evolve into different things. So, but yeah, on my Spotify it came up primarily. And then the other thing I like, which was in Rose Interrupted, is I do like musical theatre. So, so there's kind of like random songs from like Jesus Christ Superstar or Hamilton will pop up as well. So quite eclectic.
Yeah, very eclectic.
That's awesome
nice.
though. It's good to like know lots of like different things, like educated in all styles and not being snobby, because that's really annoying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what's your process when you write a book? Like, how does that work?
Well, I usually have loads of ideas stewing in my head at the same time, and it's kind of how I put those together. So with 8 Pieces of Silver, I kind of read, there's this book came out called, can't really see it because of the light, it's called Incurable Romantic. And it's written by, I think, a psychologist or a sort of psychotherapist. And bits of it were reviewed in a newspaper. So they're like case studies, all of, sort of around love. And the one that got featured in the newspapers quite a lot was about a woman who, about my age, and she was married, and she went to the dentist, and she was under general anaesthetic. And when she woke up, she was like madly in love with her dentist. And it's like chemicals are kind of shifted, but she's absolutely obsessed with her dentist. And she still loved her husband, but she'd like stand outside, you know, where the dentist's office was. And his wife sort of started getting a little bit annoyed. So they eventually moved to Dubai. But when he went, she still had a little shrine, a sort of shoebox with, you know, sort of leaflets from the dental practice and whatever. So I kind of felt it's sort of sad. But also there was another study now about a guy who was married as well, but he would go for meals with other women and have other girlfriends. And as soon as they said, "I love you," he'd dump them. So he was kind of in love with people falling in love with him. So I kind of thought, what would happen if somebody who's obsessed with someone fell in love with somebody who's obsessed with somebody falling in love with them? So that kind of was a structure. And then with Bex, I really wanted to write a Black working class lesbian. I really wanted to write, because I'm really interested in representation, because I grew up in Sussex. So I sort of went to school in sort of Hayward Heath, and I sort of grew up in Brighton. And when I was at school, I was one of the only Black kids in Walden Parks. And so you were sort of never in books, you were never in a curriculum. You weren't. So for me, sort of that sort of different types of representation are really important. And I think all of us, regardless of who we are, like reading about different people. So I knew I kind of wanted somebody like that as my main character. And then I kind of gave her the stuff I liked. So I gave her the K-pop, I gave her like Marvel films, I gave her, because I also wanted her to have friendships and I wanted her to have love. So I kind of started building my layers of my character. And then Silver sort of came next, because originally it was all going to be in Bex's voice, but it's also something about, if I didn't want Silver to be a victim. So even though she's a bit sad, I wanted her to have her own voice, you know. So
her own narrative.
Exactly. So kind of building those two together. And then I sort of finally with that one, I kind of wanted almost something old fashioned like Clues. So you have to go into her, you know, the forbidden territory of her sister's bedroom and actually find clues. And I'm not usually that structured. So it's a real challenge for me as well to do that as well. I just wanted to write a proper mystery with clues. So I was quite influenced by, again, a lot of personal things. There's a picture of my daughter when she was a baby, a sort of a Mother's Day picture in a frame. And I remember taking it back off and said, "Oh my gosh, there's a little curl of her hair in there. I forgot that." So it's like a jigsaw, you know, you're bringing all these little things together. So that's usually my process, but character always comes first, and like whatever the situation is comes first, comes after. So characters, but also their situation. So with Indigo Donut, I had to write a book in a year while I was working. And so I started off with indigo as a colour. And I thought, okay, indigo, rainbow. What if she had, you know, siblings all named after colours of the rainbow? So, you know, if you've got sort of scarlet coral, primrose, teal, bluebell, indigo and violet, but what if she didn't know them? So I do lots of what ifs. And I thought, what if she's scared of being loved and scared of loving? So, I have a love interest. So it kind of builds in layers like that.
Especially in Indigo Donut, I had a question of who was your favourite character to write, Bailey or Indigo?
I think Indigo, because I just think she has gone through so much, I think. and she's really struggled. And I used to work for before I sort of was a full-time writer, I worked for different charities when I first moved to London, and quite a lot with young people who had been in care or who were in care, or parents who were going through that process, and foster parents and grandparents. And it's a tough life. A lot of young people get moved several times. And when I first started writing it, the law's changed now. The law was that if a young person was in foster care when they were 18, then they had to leave that foster care. And I remember just thinking, my daughter, I think, was 16 or 17 at that time. And, you know, she's really independent. She could cook, you know, wash clothes, but I could never imagine saying to her, when you're 18, okay, go. It just seemed awful thing to do to young people. It's changed now for young people in foster care to 21, but not in residential homes. So there's usually also something about books that make me feel quite cross, that I feel I've got to sort of comment on. But I just liked Indigo. I just thought she was sparky. She'd been through a lot. Great choice in music. You know?
I particularly loved how her hair was like based off Blondie's Parallel Line cover. That was really funny, and the outfit she went on with on the date was really funny.
I did a lot of great research. I thought that's, you know, such an age of looking at the Parallel Lines cover. I think, oh, it's a white dress. Would you wear those heels? I don't know about that. But I thought also it'd be quite easy to get because obviously Indigo hasn't got much money, so it'd be easy to get quite a cheap white dress and get the look, I suppose. So, yeah, I really like. I think Indigo is one of my favourite characters. Bex is there, and I think Tish in Orange Boy as well, because she's like the 15-year-old that I really wanted to be. So like no spots, excellent hair, and a really big mouth on her. So like, yeah.
So in your book Orange Boy, Marlon kind of gets sucked into gang culture, sadly. How do you prepare for writing that?
I mean, the whole book actually was an accident. I'd been trying to write children's books, so for younger age groups, for quite a while, and I just wasn't good at it. I could always think of a story, and I could write description, etc., quite well, but to have a arc of a whole book, I really struggled. I think, you know, it's one of those things where you have to practice like anything. But so I went on a crime writing course, and I was going to write crime for adults because I've always loved crime books. So I actually thought when I was starting it that I was writing a crime book for adults. I didn't actually know YA existed. I just thought, I mean, I've read books by like Patrick Ness and others, but I didn't see it as YA. I just saw them as good books, you know.
Yeah.
So on the crime writing course, we were given we had to pick writing prompts out of a hat, and the one that I got was, "He woke up dreaming of yellow." You know, like Apocalypse and the Simpsons, you know, Rothko picture, you know, who knows? But there'd been a teacher strike, and my daughter had just started year 7. And being a really responsible parent, I took her to Hyde Park Winter Wonderland, and it's just like so expensive. And so we just walked around all the time complaining about how expensive it was. I had a great time. And then we needed to buy a hot dog, so we had like enough coins to get one between the two of us. And then, mustard. So that's what I thought of. And because it's a crime book, there has to be a crime at the end. So I wasn't originally writing a book, I was just writing a piece of writing. So I kind of wrote it, and then Sonia goes, "Oh, the ghost train, she dies." Like, I want to know what happens next. So it took me quite a long time to find the story, because I was really conscious. I don't want to write a book about a black boy that gets involved in crime, which would be every stereotype going. But at the time when I was living in East London, it was another time when there was quite a rise of knife crime, quite often with black and brown boys hurting each other. And quite often the newspapers kind of report it as, you know, so-and-so was an aspiring rapper or aspiring footballer. And people are much more than that. So I kind of wanted to understand what would make a lovely boy who's a bit of a geek, into the Matrix, you know, inherited his dad's vinyl, you know, his mum's a librarian, like highest calling of all, you know. So I kind of wanted to know what would make a lovely young man do something like that. And I think for me, something that's part of all of us is how far we go to protect our families. And I sometimes sort of, when I do sort of school visits, I'll tell about I'm much older than my brothers, and my one brother is 15 years younger than me. And the cul-de-sac we lived in Haywards Heath was built, we some of the first, we all moved in more or less at the same time when there were sort of new builds. So we all kind of knew each other, and my neighbours were just went to the same school mostly. But a grown-up man called my little brother, who was about 7 at the time, a racist name. So his friends brought him back to my mum. And my mum was like in a silk caftan and smelling of expensive French perfume. And she kind of like wafted out of the house and knocked on this man's door and said, "Did you call my son?" And he said, "Yeah, what are you going to do about it?" So she punched him in the nose. So, and I just thought, yeah, I get that, you know. And I used to, you know, I was really quiet when I was sort of a child and teenager. But if somebody did something to my brothers or my, you know, I think I just got really protective about it. And I think sometimes we care more about other people than we do ourselves. So I think that was part of it, and trying to tease that out of Marlon. So I think in a sense, the gang stuff came afterwards. And then I read, so I always try and read a memoir and biography when I'm writing books. I can really get into the head of the people I'm writing about. A book called Prisoner of the Streets, I think, by a guy called Robin Travis. And it's like his memoir of growing up in Hackney. So it's like, oh, it's where I live, I know it is. And he got involved in gangs as well. So I sort of took elements of his life because it really gave me an insight on why some young people get involved in that. So, and then I read lots of investigative journalist reports on gangs, but actually just reading a memoir of a young man who himself experienced it was actually much better for me to do that. And I just do that with all the books I read, memoirs, to really get the details and help me get inside my characters' heads.
That's really interesting. So I was wondering, how has your like creativity and flow been affected by lockdown?
It was really awful for the first lockdown. I think for a lot of people as well, because I think it's hard to find any headspace when you actually don't know what's going on. I remember standing on the station just before I moved down to St Leonard's, and came to look at this flat, which I'm in now. And as I was ready to go back to London, like every email on my phone was cancelling, you know, everything. So I'd gotten like the World Book Day things just before, but literally everything. And it was like, what on earth is going on? And it just felt so terrifying, really terrifying. So there was no headspace. But I couldn't read fiction. So I read quite a lot of history books. I kind of want to write I suppose like I'll say like a Georgian fantasy set in London, 18th century. So the film Inception meets the books Rivers of London. And so I've just read loads of books about Georgian London, and I listened to loads of audio books as well. And then I watched lots of crime series on Amazon Prime. In fact, I went back and looked at all the Sherlocks on BBC. And then I looked at Elementary, which is a New York version. And I just worked my way, because I think crime, if it's formulaic, I think I wanted formulas. I wanted to know that this happens there, they're going to do this, they're going to find a bad person at the end, because there were too many uncertainties. And it was hard because I had a deadline for 8 Pieces of Silver, but the editors were being furloughed, suddenly nobody knew what was going on. So it was really stressful. So I don't know. What about yourselves? Were you able to read at all, June?
I think I read quite a bit, but I found that it was harder to, because of everything going on, it was harder to relate to the books as well as I would have maybe without. But I tried my best, because sometimes there wasn't much to do, because you can't go out. So it was nice to sometimes snuggle up and read a book or something.
Yeah, that's what I felt with audiobooks. I think I just struggled with fiction because of just the outside world was too bizarre. So that's why I ended up reading quite a lot of sort of, history books as well. So, and listening to audiobooks was just comforting, because it's like somebody telling you a story. And I think so I've been listening to Stephen Fry's, the books he's done around Greek mythology. So Mythos and Heroes, I'm just about to read. And you sort of read some of those you hear some of those Greek legends, like, really? I didn't remember that bit,
Yeah. A lot of the Greek myths and stuff, they get really dark really quick as well. Hang on, did I read that right? Hang on a minute.
I was like, that was Stephen Fry. I was like, Stephen Fry saying, they did what? They just did what again?
Yeah, Zeus is doing a lot of strange things over here.
Yeah, a bit of a misogynist.
Yeah, and Hera's putting up with that.
Exactly. Well, no, she's not that good herself, as I've learned. She's done some horrible things to the women, not to Zeus, do to Zeus. Yeah. So I think it probably, it was very, And yet nobody comes out of those myths well, do they? They end up like, pushing boulders up hills for eternity, or
Yeah, like even Hercules, like it's a myth where he completes all these great tasks, but by the end he's still murdered all his family.
I know. I know, and he's in a way like Stephen Fry reads him. He sounds, I don't know, like he's a bit of a farmer, the sort of accent, or slightly Hagridy, but he's just comes a bit, it's a bit sort of all muscles, but a bit stupid. He just like storms in and starts beating people around, with his big club. It's like line skating.
You read Asterix and Obelix, a bit like him from it.
You can imagine he's probably based on it. I just think that image, isn't it? There's a big guy with a club, but just goes straight in. But they're a bit different from the sort of books on Greek myths that I read when I was a kid. There are bits in them I just didn't quite expect, I think.
So what kind of audiobooks have you been reading? Listening to?
So I listen to those, and then there's a series of books called Rivers of London, which I love, and they're written by Ben Aronovich, and he initially described them as sort of like a police procedural, but if Harry Potter grew up and he was like a constable in the Metropolitan Police, except there's a sort of department that deals like weird magic stuff. So it feels like a real London book, but just like this odd stuff goes on as well. So he's like a trainee wizard, it's still really down to earth. So I love those books. So I'd read all of the series, and then I've been listening to a lot of those again on sort of audiobook. And there's a series of books called, I can't remember what it's called, but the writer's called Mike Carey, and he wrote a script called A Girl with All the Gifts, I think, which is a film, which involves sort of zombie-ish type things. And he's originally from Liverpool, and I think he writes different kind of like, again, sort of odd fantasy series. And one of them's about a freelance exorcist. And I know, it's a friend told me about it. He's originally from Liverpool, but lives in a slightly alternative London where like zombies are looking to get right. And I listened to these, and the stories are great, but for some reason, they chose to get an American actor to try and do a really bad Liverpudlian accent.
Oh, no.
How would you do that? And also, it says things like, and I picked up my A to Z. No, it's an A to Z. And also, this actor, and I presume the producer must be American as well, know nothing about London or the UK. So whenever anybody in a book is flagged up as being either Asian or Black, he just puts on this really awful accent. And I'm just thinking, Asian and Black people in London are Londoners generally. They sound like me.
Accents is everyone.
Yeah, exactly. They just speak like nobody.
Londoners. Or Sussexers. You think, oh my goodness. But the stories were so good that I actually managed to listen to all of them while sort of shouting randomly at these sort of my earbuds.
Terrible accent.
But the world building, I love books where you do get that sort of like quirky world building, I think. And so I listened to all of those. And then there's other things. Have you read any of the Leigh Bardugo's Six of Crows?
Oh yeah, I have actually. I'm a big fan. Well, I quite like her books.
Audiobook is really good. So I listened to the first two of those, and I've got one more in. There's two, isn't there? There's the Six of Crows and the other one, Crooked Kingdom, which are a duology. And I've started listening to the trilogy of the one before that, I think. So they're really good. I love those. I think just amazing world building.
Oh, definitely. I think I read one quite recently by her called Shadow and Bone.
That's the series I'm reading at the moment. Yeah. They're quite thick, aren't they?
I actually had to go back to that one because at the start of the lockdown I found it hard to read really fantasy books because it is very fantasy based. But reading it again, it's actually really good and interesting and engaging.
Yeah, I don't think it's true. I mean, I don't think I could have actually physically read it. I think just simply, like you said, at lockdown, it was hard to focus and concentrate. And I think the size of it and actually just focusing on the words, but actually having someone tell me the story. And in the Six of Crows, because it's multiple points of view, they actually do have different actor for each point of view. So I think that works really well. So you kind of know who you're with, which helps, And but I was really impressed with the world building on that. It was just fantastic. So, and I think they're making a series of it, aren't they? Because I looked on.
I think they're adapting it into series.
Yeah. So that'd be interesting.
I hear they're also remaking the Percy Jackson books as well, to be a series because the film messed up really badly, apparently.
I started watching the first one, but it was just a bit. It's like I watched, started trying to watch the Artemis Fowl movie on Disney.
Yeah, the Disney Plus series.
And I started, and it's a pity because of books. I remember, the books came out ages ago, and before I was a writer. But I remember when I was doing a sort of research for thinking about, what sort of writing is out there, and it was described as like Die Hard with fairies. I thought, yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah, that's a bit of a misjudgment, like on the film.
It is. It's like and I'd met Owen Colfer a couple of times. Who wrote them. He's such a lovely guy, and I thought, why would you do that to this man? It's like, I don't know. It's like they took everything that was fun and a little bit edgy out of it and tried to turn it into something that's very sanitized, but also something that's really stereotypical. So every time you see Ireland, it's like pipe music. It's like, oh, come on. And a friend of mine said he tried to watch it, and he said when Judi Dench came on and said top of the morning, you go, look, I'm done.
Just going on those Irish stereotypes.
You think, oh, I suppose they literally Disneyfied Ireland, didn't they? I suppose, but it's like such a pity because it's such a good storytelling. There's such scope for it, and they made the main character Artemis Fowl not intriguing or compelling, just really obnoxious. I thought, I don't care what happens to you or your dad. So I think I went and turned off and watched The Mandalorian instead, which I really liked. So.
Oh yeah, I love The Mandalorian.
Yeah, I think I can't.
Face reveals though. They should have done one at the end when he was saying goodbye to Grogu. Oh, you might have spoiled something.
But I haven't seen the second series yet, but I'm presumed. No, it's okay. They're going to make a third series, so something's going to happen. I don't mind knowing it as spoilers, but it was just I came to it quite late, mainly because I was just saving it. But there's a little scene where he's holding in the first series where he's holding his little thing of bone broth, and the two are fighting, and he's like,
so cute. Like they did such a good job. I don't know how they could create something so adorable.
No, it's good. It's lovely, and again, I suppose it's the opposite of Artemis Fowl. It's about how you take something where there's such high expectations and just keep it really good, and like the production, but also they sort of riff off the idea, the old Western films, like the sort of the Clint Eastwood figure, and so they kind of blend these different genres together, plus what we know from Star Force is that yes, on the bar, and there's ones with the funny tentacles, and all that, and still, but managed to surprisingly just keep everything satisfied. Everyone's satisfied. Really good female characters as well.
Yeah.
Which is really good. So I was like, I'm saving the second series until I finish the edits on my new book, and it's like, yes.
That can be a reward.
Absolutely. And also I've got women directing some of the episodes as well. So it's interesting. A friend of mine said to look out for the episodes where a couple of the women have directed, because actually they tend to be more emotionally involving, where the men are sort of more action, where the women have the action, but actually you get some more emotions in there as well. So, and the artwork at the end, as you see, I'm really geeky. I really am geeky.
Yeah. So, I'm really interested in like the artwork at the end and how they actually film it and the like sets and how they do that. And they've got like a big screen that goes behind, and I think that's really interesting, like from the traditional way of things are normally set. And I thought that was quite strange, but also quite interesting.
But it just looks really realistic, doesn't it? I actually believe they're on those little hover bikes going through the desert, the wind going in the caves. Yeah. And I just think, they have really, not skimped on production values, have they? It's great.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on here. It was really nice speaking to you.
Yeah, really lovely.
Thank you so much for interviewing me. I hope you've had a good half term, and I hope the rest of your year goes well. This uncertain year goes well.
Patrice was so much fun to talk with, wasn't she?
Yes, definitely. Plus, she gave us a signed copy of 8 Pieces of Silver. For a chance to win, leave a comment and share this video, preferably using the hashtag BookSmart. The winner will be announced in next month's video, where you again will have the chance to win yet another book. So please remember to use the hashtag BookSmart.
Emily?
Yes, Madsen?
Should we get some other recommendations for books to read?
Yes, definitely. Well, here they are.
Hi. Today, to mark the centenary of the author's birth, I'd like to recommend The Talented Mr. Ripley by Patrice Highsmith. She's one of my favourite authors. In hindsight, she probably could have done with psychological help, but this is nevertheless a great book. If you want a gripping read, then this book is for you.
Hi, I'm Caitlin, and I'm going to recommend Northern Lights from the book trilogy His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. It is set in a fantasy world where people's souls take the form of animals beside them. It follows the pursuit of gateways to other worlds against the laws created by the overpowering church. There is also a television series on the BBC based off of this book series, with the final season dedicated to the last book having been confirmed for next year. So if you love action, adventure and watching TV, you'll love this book.
Hi, I'm Evie, and today I'll be sharing with you My Sister's Keeper by Jody Pickle. This tear-jerking book is an incredibly thought-provoking read with a controversial plotline, asking the question, do you own your own body and have the right to decide what happens? Or, if you're a child, can your parents top you up like spare parts?
Well, that's it for this month's BookSmart. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making it. Please tell us what you think of the video in the comments section, ideally using the hashtag BookSmart. See you again in next month's video.